brought some bats, and that's what I throw on, and tools and an apron. And one of the most important things in ceramics is to make sure everything's clean each time you use it, because the biggest health hazard is the dust. So you want to wash your tools off, wash your apron, and it's a good idea to also throw with a towel on your lap so you can wipe your hands off, and that takes it off a little better than the apron would. I brought some stoneware with grog, and it's a really great clay for throwing because the grog in it makes it stronger. If you're throwing porcelain, porcelain's almost like throwing butter. So if you think about if you're trying to even sculpt something out of butter, that would be really difficult.
Do you manipulate temperature of it like you would if you were actually sculpting butter then? Like to make it more firm?
Probably. We would try to. And usually I like to wedge the clay first. Is it okay if I do it on one of these tables?
Your white clay on the one that says white only clays behind Mr. Bishop.
Oh,
That right here?
And even though this clay came from a bag, it went through a pug mill, and the pug mill takes the air out. But it's a good idea to still wedge it in case there's a few areas that are a little bit stiff or moist or dry. It evens out the piece that you're throwing, and it also takes out any air pockets in case there's an air pocket that's left over from when it went through the pug mill. And you'll be able to hear these little pops when you do it. And you just push down and forward and roll it back. And a good number for wedging your clay is probably about between 10 to 30 times. If you keep hearing popping, you want to keep wedging it and maybe go to 30. If you have air bubbles when you're throwing, should I take this off or can she still hear me?
I don't.
You can take it off.
Yeah, I think you can take it off.
I don't want to drop it in the pot. Thank you. I'm going to flatten out this bottom. If there's a little bit of a dip, that's going to create an air pocket, and when I'm throwing, it might pull the piece off the wheel, and that wouldn't be good. So I want to hit it down really hard onto this flat bottom. And you want to turn on the wheel. That's an important part. And the pedal has different speeds. When I'm centering, I'm going to have it go a little faster. When I'm throwing, it's going to be a little bit slower. And when you center the clay, there's two different ways that I was taught to do it. I'm sure there's 20 different ways to center it. But first you can push down, and then these hands are interlocked. You want to make sure you create a triangle. So I'm going to be really stable with my elbows on my legs. And I'm pushing the clay into the center instead of the clay, making me go all over the place. Centering is really important. It's almost like when you're baking a cake, when you're mixing it, if you don't mix it good enough in the beginning, it sets the tone for the cake. You might get like a pocket of egg or sugar or something later if you didn't mix it properly. And when you're throwing, if your piece isn't completely centered before you start throwing it, you can have an area that's really thin and an area that's really thick, and then it won't do really well when you put it through the firing process. And you can also take your hands and put them together like this and push forward. So as long as your elbows are on your legs and you're pushing forward, your thumbs are on top of the middle to keep that from coming up in the air. That also helps with centering. And this can take 5 minutes and it can take 2 hours. It just depends. When you have more experience, it can be really quick. When I went to China during undergrad, I went for professional development for 2 weeks, and I watched the master potters throw. They would center this in maybe 2 seconds. Like if you blinked, it was centered and you missed it. And then they would throw all these pots. So this piece is getting really close, if you're not sure when you're throwing, you can take your finger and put it against here. And your nail should make a little mark. And if you feel like the pot is jumping like this, and you're hitting it and you're bouncing away and you're hitting it, there's a lot of space, and that's really off center. But if you hold it there and you don't feel as if the piece of clay is bouncing away a lot, then you're probably getting pretty close. And you might want to give it just one more push. I feel like this piece is right where I want it to be. Now I'm going to put my finger on the top and find the center. So when you run your finger across the middle, there's a quiet spot in the center. And on the outside you feel all of the sand and grog that's pulling, but once you hit that nice little quiet spot, it feels almost as if the clay's not moving at all. And that's where you're going to push down. And I'm putting my fingers here on this finger to stabilize it. My elbows are on my legs. And that way I don't throw the pot off center when I'm throwing. And you want to make a little hole. You want to have a little less than 1/2 inch at the bottom, and that's something that you'll start to learn as you throw more. And you can throw and cut your pot in half and then see how much room you have down the center. Or if you want to save your pot, you can take your needle tool and press it in. And then when you pull it out, you can see the clay line. So this one's pretty thick. I can go down a little bit more because that clay line is here. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper. And I'm also going to slow my speed down a little bit. Because now I'm going to start to form the pot, and I don't want the pot going all crazy as I'm throwing it. So I'm going to take these 2 fingers, and I'm going to put those in and pull across the bottom. And there's lots of ways you can make a bowl. Some people like to make a bowl that goes completely in like this. I like to make one that's a little bit flatter. I like my rim to be a little thick in case I'm eating cereal and I'm walking around. I don't want the milk sloshing out all over the place. And when you're making functional work, you also want to think about how is that piece going to be used? Is it going to go in the sink, in the dishwasher? Is it going to have a lot of things hitting into it? So you want to think about your rims, how much wear and tear are they going to take? And you don't want them to chip, so you don't want a paper thin rim that if it hits into another cup in a sink, it's going to break. So now I have this hole, and I'm pressing my sponge into the center at the bottom. And I want to press really hard. And that makes me go down a little bit deeper, but it's also compressing my bottom. If I don't compress it, it can cause an S crack. And that's from the water that's in there, and it goes like that, and there could be an air pocket in there. So it's very important to compress that bottom. When I first started college, I started at a county college, and it was community college. I transferred to a university, and I didn't want to take ceramics. I wasn't really into 3D art yet. I was just very into painting and drawing. And my mom nagged me for a year. So I finally gave in. I was like, fine, I'll take ceramics because she loved pottery, she loved mugs. And then that was it. I absolutely loved it, and she still like teases me today. If I wasn't on your back about that, you would have never known what you wanted to do in your life. Now I'm going to pull the walls up. So the outside hand is just a guide. It's almost like gymnastics. You have a spotter and then you have the gymnast. My inside hand is like the gymnast. This is doing most of the work. And my outside hand is just pushing against this very gently to keep it from going all over the place. My inside hand is pushing a little bit out. And my outside hand is pushing gently in. And then every time you do a pull, you want to smooth the top. And if that top feels as though it's a road with lots of bumps, it's going up and down, then you want to take your needle tool and just hold it right against the top and go through and pull it off. This room is pretty good, but I'll do it just to show. This is how you would even it out. You just pull it right up. I'm going to do another pull, and I'm going to push a little bit harder on the inside on my way up this time. And sometimes you get a little bit of loose clay from the bottom. So you have to be on the lookout for that when it comes up, because you don't want to mess up your nice rim. Just a little bit of that stuff. When you're throwing, you want to go slow in the beginning, and once you get a rhythm, it's almost like second nature. It's like driving your car. You know how hard to press on the gas pedal. You know how far you should go when you're turning or changing lanes. And you can switch your sponge on the inside or the outside. When you're throwing, there's different ways that you can do everything, and it really comes down to how you feel the most comfortable. And now that I've got this basic shape for a bowl, my bottom out here is a little bit thick. I'm going to stick my finger in there, and I'm going to trim into that. So after the pot dries a little bit, I'm going to cut it off and flip it over and start to trim into here, and that's going to create, so your bowl is going like this. So I might curve it out like this, or it might just curve under and have a very small foot on it to create a nice shadow. So I like to leave this very bottom part a little thick, and if you push too hard when you're doing those pulls, that can make it a little bit unstable down here, so when you are trimming, you might trim through. So it's a good idea to just leave a little bit extra thickness. And this is a wood rim, and these are amazing. So once you start throwing, you have these little lines in here, and some people really like that, but I like to smooth it out, and I'll just go up and down with this rim. And if there's any chunks, it'll take those off, any of that loose clay. I'm also pressing it on the bottom a little bit, and that's just a second compression to ensure that I'm not going to get that S crack on the bottom. Does anyone like to do things while they're eating? Do you guys carry bowls around, or if you're having ice cream, going around the house and stuff? I'm going to put a rim on this pot that is a spill-proof rim, but it's still nice and strong. So I'm going to take the clay and I'm going to squeeze it just below the top. And I want to get it really wet. If you feel as if the clay is sticking to your hands when you're throwing, you can add some more water, and then that makes it really juicy, and your hand just glides through. But there's also a pile of water down the bottom, and I don't want that to sit too long, so I have this sponge on a stick, and we can make these just with any sponge and any stick you find. You can tie it on there. And that's just a really good water absorber. And if you have a cylinder, this is great, because then you don't have to stick your arm in and mess up your beautiful design. You just stick a little sponge in. So I'm going to squeeze really gently right here, and I'm going to smooth out this rim. These are makeup sponges. They're really cheap. You get a box of, I think, 20 of them. And these are great for finishing a pot. So I have this nice line here. I'm just going to smooth right under it. And then I'm going to curve it like this and put it against my rim. And that's going to make it a tiny bit rounded on the edge, but not enough that you notice. And that gives it that stability when the spoon is resting on it or it's in the dishwasher. When you're making functional work, you really want to think about how people use those things. So that's the pot, and if I wanted to get really fancy, one of the rims that my professor would show me, I thought he was the most amazing person in the world the first time he showed me. He would take his fingers and go up and squeeze the rim. And he would do that in 3 different spots. And then not only do you have an area to rest your spoon, but you also have somewhere to sip up your milk when you're done. Does everyone want to throw now? Are you guys inspired?
Looks like fun.
Yeah.
It is. It's so much fun.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You could work at Silver Hollow City now.
What's that?
That's a long